Hi guys, after a hip surgery you are going to need some tools to help you dress, so let's have a little look at what it is that you're going to need. The first thing that you're going to need is a sock aid, and I'll be showing you two of them just so that you can see how they differ. The next thing you'll need is a long-handled shoe horn, and finally something called a reacher, but it's also known as a grabber. When dressing the lower half of your body, the easiest place to start would be your socks to avoid any wrestling later on. I'm going to start by showing you the Easy Sock sock aid. Now this little button here is quite important to not only keeping the whole thing together, but actually keeping the sock on the aid while trying to put it onto your foot, so it's quite important. The whole thing is quite sturdy, which is why I actually prefer using it. So at the very end you'll have the handle that you'll pull against. It's quite rigid, and then because it's made out of plastic, it means your foot slides really easily in and out of there. As with any sock aid, you start by sliding the sock over the end of the sock aid itself. If you've had a hip replacement, as I had here, you may have some restrictions in place, for instance not bending across 90 degrees, which makes this useful, but also not moving your knee across that midline point, which is why I'm using the sock aid from the inside of my operated leg there. It just means that my knee hasn't fallen inwards. You need to be very careful about not breaking any restrictions that you might have in place. Now on my non-operated side, so my right side, you'll notice I've done it from the outside, and it's just to show you that the knee can fall in if you're not careful and you're not using it in the correct way. I'll now show you the socks on stocking and sock aid. This sock aid's very flexible, but it's also very strong. At the end there are two straps that you'll use to pull the sock onto the end of your foot. These are actually quite lengthy straps, so those who are taller won't be breaking their restrictions. And at the very end there are two handles just to use for grip. I found it really easy getting the sock onto the socks on sock aid. It was incredibly easy compared to the Easy Sock, it has to be said. However, I had a bit of difficulty manoeuvring it and getting it onto my leg, because you have to swing and flick it away from your body, which is a bit difficult. This is the problem I had with this sock aid, however. You have to tug and pull really quite hard against your post-operative leg. Now after a hip replacement or osteotomy, that is an incredibly painful thing to do. The Easy Sock uses your heel as leverage, but this socks on sock aid uses your entire leg. Now that's the reason that I prefer the Easy Sock. It's a lot less painful. To dress the lower half of your body, you're going to need your reacher grabber tool. I have two sizes of this tool. I have a longer 80cm one and this shorter 65cm one that actually folds in the middle. It's quite handy for taking out and about, but not so handy for actually dressing with, as it can pull apart when doing that. So I always prefer to use this longer one, and it also means you don't break your restrictions. Now you can get quite a bit of swelling after a hip surgery, so I always purchase some huge pairs of underwear to make sure that I can actually get them on and off more comfortably. So when you are getting dressed, you need to make sure that you're grabbing the entire leg with the grabber. So putting your entire leg of your underwear into the grabber to pull across your foot in one go. You need to do the same with the other side, so grab hold of your underwear without breaking your restrictions, and then pull across your foot in one go. Now pull the underwear up to your thighs and just leave them sat there, because we're going to continue to dress the rest of us before actually standing, and we can pull it all up in one go then. As with the underwear, you're going to need some pretty stretchy trousers to get you through the first few weeks of your recovery after a hip surgery. There can be quite a bit of swelling, so you want to be as comfortable as you can during that time. Starting with your surgical side, gather the entire leg of the trousers up into the grabber. This means you can pull it across your toes quite quickly and quite easily and up your leg without too much tugging or pulling, and this will avoid any pain within your hip joint then. Now, to begin with, I'd recommend you doing the same thing on the other side, which is especially important if you've had a bilateral hip surgery, for instance. You can then use the grabber then to adjust it and make it a bit more comfortable for you. After any hip surgery, it'll always be recommended to you that you make sure you're wearing some kind of footwear, so popping some slippers on when you are getting dressed. Now, I have got some quite soft slippers here, but if yours are quite rigid, then you can use a long-handled shoehorn to help you out with this as well. Now you've got to the very end of dressing your bottom half. This is where you can actually get up and then pull everything up in one go, so it just avoids you getting up and down a lot. Finally, there are two ways I'm going to show you to take your sock off using the shoehorn and the grabber. Using the shoehorn in one hand, slide it down the sock against your heel and then push your sock off. You'll need to use the grabber in the other hand if you're quite tall, because the shoehorn is quite short, so you end up juggling a little bit between the two. This is why I prefer to just use the grabber. Now, if you have one that's similar to mine, you'll notice it's got a very handy little hook at the end. If you can angle that just right and push it down against your sock in between your Achilles tendon and your ankle bone, it actually whips your socks off quite nicely without the need to bend, which means you avoid the risk of breaking any of your restrictions. And that's it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, or you have a question, click the like button, comment below, or you could also visit us at livingwithhipdysplasia.com.